This is the international issue speech titled Persecution of Christians in Egypt. According to Amanda Marshall, a writer for Fox News, under Egypt's constitutional rights, Christians are free to practice their faith. Persecution, however, has been rampant as Muslim extremists seek to deny those rights. We are largely unaware of the persecution of Christians in Egypt that's taking place today by Muslim extremists. We are affected by this issue because as a part of a global community, the struggles of those around the world does affect us, and we should be willing to help them. We get to have religious freedom as one of the greatest values in the United States, as stated in the Constitution, is the right to freedom of religion. We believe that individuals should be free to choose whatever religion they want to practice. So if we value this religious freedom, then we should want to help others have the same freedom. The only question that remains then is this: how can we help put a stop to the persecution of Christians in Egypt? First, let's take a closer look at the persecution of Christians in Egypt. Then we'll be able to evaluate how we are affected by it and how we can help. Christians in Egypt are forced to decide daily whether it's worth it to take the risk of their lives for their faith. There has been tension going on in Egypt for a long time, but since the overthrow of President Mubarak and the recent uprising of Morsi, Christians are no longer offered protection for their faith. An article from May 2013 by Stephen Glane of the New York Times states that since the ousting of Mr. Mubarak in February 2011, a growing number of Copts, including some of the most successful businessmen, have left Egypt or are preparing to do so, fearing persecution by an Islamist-controlled government, as much as the stagnant economy that is smothering their industries. Businessmen who are Christians in Egypt are being forced to leave because they cannot live safely and they can't make money any longer. In an interview with Lily Assad, who's an exchange student at ACU, whose parents are ministers in Egypt, she stated that her parents feared for their lives, and had to do things daily to make sure they were safe. Now, you may be wondering why I'm sharing this information with you if it doesn't directly impact you. But there are two reasons why you should care. First of all, I'd like to ask you to consider that perhaps events that are taking place around the world do affect you. Countries need each other to survive. We share resources, and making peace with other countries is important in order for the world to function correctly. According to the American Chamber of Commerce in Egypt, the Egypt-U.S. relationship is characterized by multiple economic and security interests, leading the way for cooperation. We need each other. Secondly, I'd like to make the assertion that when others face limits on their freedom, we should be aware and fight for them. It's our responsibility. So when we're strong, we should fight for the weak. When we're privileged, we should fight for the unprivileged. When we are free, we should fight for those under bondage. When we're safe, we should fight for those who are in danger. When we have a voice, we should fight for those who have been silenced. One day, the favor may be returned to us. Now, Christians in Egypt are facing a lot of these difficulties. So how do we fight for them? How can we make an impact on people who live thousands of miles away? There are two ways I believe that we can make a difference in the lives of Christians in Egypt, starting today. My first suggestion is simply to care. If we don't have compassion for these people and we don't care that they are being hurt, then we can't help them. My second suggestion is then to pray. James 5:16 says that the prayer of a righteous person is powerful and effective. There's a lot of power in prayer. God already sees his people in Egypt. He is already fighting for them, and he loves them. He wants their protection. So let's partner with him in fighting for them. Let's just take a minute to review the information I've given you to chew on. First, you learned about the persecution of Christians in Egypt. Then I asked you to consider two different ways this affects you. After considering the implications of being part of a global community, I gave you 2 suggestions about how to stop the persecution of Christians in Egypt. We are affected by the struggles of people around the world, and we should care for them. The second thing we need to do is pray for the safety of Christians in Egypt and also pray for the Egyptian government. Let me leave you with this. In Matthew 10:42, Jesus says, "And if anyone gives even a cup of cold water to one of these little ones who is my disciple, truly I tell you, that person will certainly not lose their reward." Could your prayers be a cup of cold water for Jesus' disciples in Egypt?
The end.